How national, how populist do you think we can get to preserve our culture and our identity? Because it's not necessarily immigrants that are stifling the American people from having babies. Part of it is online pornography and instant gratification. Whereas not too long ago, we used to have to work. We used to have to confront and initiate conversation with a lady. We had to go up to her and talk to her and take her out and court her. Now we get instant gratification. We climax and we see naked girls, digital, that is, in the digital experience. We see them online with the click of a few buttons. So, and part of it is the economy, from what I've read or from what I've heard, and I'm not sure the volume on that or to how much or to the extent that is, but it seems pretty reasonable that the economy is one of the most important factors. But what I'm trying to say is that I suspect that with many instances, and immigration being one of them right now, the topic of this video, as well as the internet and artificial intelligence, but the media gets us to focus on smaller scale things so that we're oblivious, we're ignorant to the bigger picture. And I think the bigger picture is that it doesn't matter like how much illegal immigration we get rid of. How could we preserve our culture in the age of the internet, of artificial intelligence? I mean, human culture it's being threatened. Not just American culture, but I mean, human existence overall. Illegal immigrants take our jobs, don't they? They take our social security numbers, but what about computers, automation? Not just taking our blue collar jobs and eroding the middle class, but the human experience. Remember during COVID-19, there was like a 6 feet distance, no contact. We couldn't go to church, go see our families or our parents. They said, hey, you had to keep 6 feet away, and they came up with apps. I forgot their names, but they were like an app. There's one app I remember was heavily advertised, and it talked a lot about. It was basically about like groups. People could come together and like have a little party, a digital experience, a digital party. Whereas, they're all in one room FaceTiming each other, and that way you can feel more connected, the advertisement said. That way, whenever you're really physically distant from your loved ones and your peers, you're actually not, because you see them on your screen. And it's like the COVID-19 was the precursor to, a heavily endowed society with artificial intelligence, with technology, and that's just one example that I have. But part of our experience is going outside and talking to other people, communicating with other people, being part of our communities, and a lot of us are staying inside, including myself. So how could you preserve American culture? How could you preserve your American experiences in that case? With smart TVs, smartphones, smart tablets, smart watches. I mean, the basis of the American culture, American traditions, is human contact. And if you take away human contact, why even talk about American culture? Why even talking about preserving our identity, our traditions, whenever we don't have an American to begin with, an actual red-blooded American, a person to begin with? We have automation, we have computers, and computers aren't precisely American. They're aliens, they're foreigners. They don't even work parallel to human biology, for crying out loud. Not only that, but the American economy is sustained by us blue-collar workers, by the middle class, and a lot of these computers and these automation jobs and these robots, they're taken away, they're stealing, they're replacing human hands, blue-collar work. It's like sometimes you just have to pay attention. I think I presuppose that the internet will lead to internationalism. We have the prefix inter in internet. A net is anything that captures a vulnerable prey, right? So are we the vulnerable prey? Are we the net? Are we the people within the net? And who controls the internet? Well, it's CERN, 666, the number of the beast. Then also another word for internet is web. Spiders create webs for what purpose? To capture their prey, so that spiders can eat their prey. So are we entangled in their web? Are we entangled in this net? And we just don't know it yet. We think we're not, because you can surf through in many places of the internet and get lost. Many different angles, corners, and avenues and aspects, but nonetheless, we're still in that web. We're still in Saturn's matrix, essentially. Inter means between, within, among. Internet could simultaneously, they talk about interstellar objects. When you normally hear about interstellar beings or objects, you think about aliens, and the things that the internet and interstellar beings have in common is that they're foreign. They're not of this world, of this plane, of the earth. They're alien. They're from another world. And while I'm against illegal immigrants, aliens, anybody and everybody in our country should be assimilated, should have an American identity. But at the same time, all of these words with the prefix inter, I believe all of this will come true. Internet, intergalactic, internationalism, intergovernments. How nationalist, again, do you think we can get or go back to making America great in the rise of the internet? Our party, the Republican Party, that's supposedly for nationalism, etc., they have like a project funding artificial intelligence to be the winner, or to be to lead the race in AI, and we funded about it's like a $500 billion project. Internet, interconnected. That's another thing too. All of our devices, including us, we're all being interconnected in the web, in the internet. When you turn on your phone and your TV at the same time, you get a notification from your TV like, hey, do you want to connect your phone? We detected your phone is on. Maybe you're on the Spotify app, and then it says, do you want to connect your Spotify account? Then your laptop, then your tablet, then your smartwatch. Like, everything interconnects with everything. Whenever I'm at a coffee shop and I put on Bluetooth, and on my phone it's scanning for my Bluetooth headphones, it detects other Bluetooth devices, and asks, do you want to not correlate, do you want to collaborate with another person with their musical playlist? And while I'm sure they have a good music taste, not as good as mine, though. I think I listen to the best music, hands down. But, I mean, through the internet, we're all being interrelated, interconnected, interjoined into basically a singularity. One race, one religion, one economy, one military, one culture, one identity, communism, globalism, centralism, totalitarianism, thus the global citizen. And Freemasons and the Catholic Church, they're all for this, just in different ways. On the surface, they have different teachings, but at their core, their philosophical essence, they're all for the same thing. And it doesn't matter if they like each other or if they're in bed with each other. They had a meeting in Italy, like a few years ago, like back in 2022, where they couldn't settle their differences, and the Catholic Church still proclaimed that nobody who's an official Catholic can join a Masonic lodge. And then Masons said, hey, well, you guys are anti-biblical too, because you guys write about homosexuals and transgenders in the Bible, but then y'all let these people in the Catholic Church, and so on and so on. I mean, I like one of my favorite quotes is by William Shakespeare. He said, the whole world is a stage, and the men and women are merely players in the stage, merely actors. I think that when we take our eyes off of what the media wants us to focus on, and if we actually start looking at the bigger picture, because I think that in some cases they want us to focus on the smaller scale things so that we won't take our eyes off of what really matters on the grand picture, the grand scale. And I mean, I don't see how we could preserve and go back to populism, to nationalism, to having an American culture, an American identity, not just us, but any country. It doesn't matter if we have a national or a constitutional republic, a political party that's for it. In the age of the internet, of AI, of artificial intelligence, of technology, you don't have any politicians speaking out against this, because it goes above these people, Silicon Valley technocrats. But now we're heading into like spiritual warfare, into heavenly realms, and the same philosophical belief, the same heavenly the same religion or religions, but just this. I think all political parties, no matter how different they are on the surface, all political parties resort and they purport to one basic common ideology. They both have the same mission statement, and you could write it down or say it in one sentence, But they have layers upon layers on their surface, on TV, on the screen, where they make you think that they're on different teams or different sides, but all in all, that same heavenly realm, that same heavenly forces, spiritual forces, are controlling both sides, and these politicians can't really stop what's coming, because I think artificial intelligence technology, it's propelled and compelled by heavenly spiritual forces. It was determined long ago, not by politicians, but by extraterrestrial beings, that this would be the end game, the end result. And you don't see any politicians speaking out against this. So, yeah, intergalactic, interstellar, it makes sense how even the so-called common sense party, the Republican Party, Donald Trump, the party that's factual and that resorts to objectification, even this party is talking about aliens and UFOs, and all of this decades ago was considered to be pseudoscience. Liberal progressive ideology, a lot of these people are like, they purport to pseudoscience. A lot of their stuff doesn't make any sense. We live in a civic society where we have to be reasonable and cemented and objective in our mandates and in our regulations. But liberals and progressives, these people are just pseudoscientific in all of their ideologies. You can't have a grounded society with their religion, with whatever they believe in. They're actually non-binary, fluid, and all this other quantum physics stuff. But it's kind of funny how that so-called party of common sense is actually entertaining this idea of aliens and of UFOs. And again, not too long ago, this was all considered entertainment, like something to laugh about, aliens and all that stuff. Like, go to college or go back to school or read your books, go get a degree. Why are you talking about this stuff? We're in the real world. We got to talk about real world substance, things that matter, things that we can actually see, taste, touch, and hear, etc. So, but whenever this party is talking about it, that lets you know that there is a real agenda behind it. Interstellar will lead to intergalactic. The internet, all of these are tied in together. The basic commonality, the common denominator is foreigners, aliens, immigrants, not from another country, but from another world, otherworldly. They're not of the earth. They're not normal, they're paranormal. The prefix inter, which as we see means between, within, among, it means almost, if not the same thing as para. We're normal. We live in a third dimension. Anybody who's abnormal needs to go to a mental institution, right? Like Democrats and liberals. These people aren't on Earth. They're not grounded on Earth. Abnormal, the prefix ab means away from, without. And so if we're normal creatures, then what are paranormal creatures? Well, they come from another realm, another plane of existence, another dimension. And if we live in our third dimension, then these paranormal beings come from other dimensions, otherworldly dimensions, higher dimensions. Alongside, beyond, contrary. Yep, almost roughly the same thing, between, within, among. And don't you think it's funny? Like, don't you notice that in alien movies, in movies about UFOs, etc., the characters always say, they're among us. That seems to be the common theme with all the protagonists. That's like something that you hear almost in every movie. They're among us. Oh, they're walking among us. They're walking among us. And these people are like regarded as like conspiracy theorists. They're not the best looking. They're kind of grungy, kind of a little bit dirty, or they're not the you know, the handsome guy who plays quarterback for the high school football team who dates the prettiest girl in high school, they're not regarded in that light. They're kind of like conspiracy theorists, wearing glasses, messy hair, doesn't have a girlfriend, but you always hear that theme in these movies. They're among us. They walk among us. Because, essentially, I think paranormal realms, dimensions, they're as real as anything else. But in our case, what real means, since we live and since we're in the age of industrialization, real is what we can see, taste, touch, and hear, and smell and feel, right? That's how we go along in our society. Because now we view the world as matter before mind. But back then, in the ancient times, the ancients viewed the world as mind before matter, similar to the Native Americans. They felt that the physical was a manifestation of the spiritual, and that, the physical and the non-physical or spiritual, they were all interrelated, interconnected, intertied, interjoined. They were all connected. They were animists. And so I have some Native American in me, being a Hispanic or a Latino, a Mexican American. I don't know how much I have in me. I don't think I'd ever do a DNA test, because a lot of these companies, they hold on to your DNA, a sample of it, and I just find that hell no. Hell no. Hell the fuck no. And excuse my French, but hell the fuck no. I even turn off AI settings, and you can't, the button where some websites and companies that you use for normal services like electricity and internet. I even turn off the button where they could sell my personal information. I do my best to protect my privacy online and turn off a lot of these AI stuff, because I don't need it. A lot of these automation stuff, I can do a lot of these stuff myself. Life is a whole lot more fun, a whole lot more salty whenever you're doing it yourself, not whenever, because you're living a real human experience. You're engaging, as opposed to being passive and being a bystander and letting people or automation or computers do stuff for you. So me having some Native American blood, does that mean that I need to learn a Native American language? Does that mean that I have to be like Native Americans? But back then, secret societies were more rampant. They were more prominent. There were tribes back then, and every tribal member, they were all initiated. If not all of them, then most of them, they were all initiated. They had to do certain rites, certain rituals, a rite of passage to be initiated into their secret society. That was all common back then. And you can read a lot about that in Mark Booth's. Mark Booth wrote a book called The Secret History of the World, where he talks a lot about that, how the ancients viewed the world as mind before matter. Or, in other words, quantum physics was the norm. But now it's classical physics. It's matter before mind. What we can see, taste, touch, hear. Classical mechanical laws. But all that's dramatically, swiftly shifting. Even movies and TV shows are talking more and more about the paranormal, more about occult stuff. Wednesday Addams is just one of them, but witchcraft, sorcery, all that's becoming really widespread. And it's by design. It's not by accident, or that, hey, it's really hip or trendy. Yeah, it's really hip and trendy, but it's not because it just somehow just came into fruition. No, it's purposefully orchestrated like that for a time like this. At a time whenever simultaneously they're talking a lot about aliens, people are comfortable talking a lot about it. Again, even the so-called common sense party, about reason, about logic, about rationality, even they're talking about something that decades ago, not too long ago, was considered pseudoscientific. So, the paranormal is the same thing as extra dimensions. If we're terrestrial, because we're of this earth, we're of this plane, the green earth, and what are extraterrestrials? that's another name for aliens. They must be not of this earth, right? And if we live in the third dimension, you hear that aliens come from extra dimensions. Well, what's an extra dimension? It has to be a higher dimension than our physical, materialistic, macroscopic dimension. So, what a time to be alive, but also I think that people are going to fall. I think that you got to be vigilant and discerning and not fall for the great deception, because I think a lot of people are going to fall for it. A lot of people only know religion. They don't know the truth with a capital T. A lot of people are going to fall for it, and they're going to go along with it, and they're going to be part of the New World Order, and it's all going to be slavery. You might as well be dead, because, hey, you keep your sanity, well, you'll be dead, but you die with honor, with dignity, with pride, standing up for yourself instead of not selling out, not having a backbone or a spine, and being part of their global citizenship society. As far as I know, I'll always be an American, English-speaking American, Christian, constitutional republic, with droplets, pints of democracy. And, yeah. So that's just a little bit about what I wanted to touch on this video. Hope you guys liked it. And if you all have any questions, feedback, or comments, or any other resources that could benefit my audience, myself included, and this video, then please feel free to drop them in the comment section. Thank you, and God bless.